Thanks, everyone. Good to be here. As you can see, I'm not very technical, but I guess this is a outsider's perhaps view of the risks that we see, less from a kind of bottom-up coding perspective, but kind of about how it kind of comes together in the kind of emergent risks that we're seeing in the space. So I think just more importantly, like we very much see security as fundamental to how this space can grow. Everything's about building on top of other stuff and being open and permissionless and composable and all that great stuff. But if the foundations are not secure, then you've got real problems further up the stack, and that limits the products and the useful things that we can build for people. So this is kind of our view of where we see the risks emerging. So yeah, four main areas I'm just going to focus on, and these are kind of less kind of real technical stuff, but they're more kind of general aspects. So cross-chain bridges, we see centralization risks, multi-sigs, and all that type of thing. Layer 2 solutions is a newer area which is obviously getting a lot of traction, but we haven't quite seen massive TVL growth there yet, so wouldn't describe heaps of them as proven yet. An interesting one that I want to dive a little bit into is the kind of the interfaces and the smart contract integrations, where one system uses another and how they kind of come together. And another more interesting one, which we haven't seen a lot of yet, though there have been some smaller ones, is decentralized governance and contract updates, and how we actually do that in a more secure way, and what that means when you change something deep in the stack. So yeah, cross-chain bridges and protocols. I put this together before the Ronin network one happened, but this stuff's hard. My perspective of this is it's quite hard technically. Right now, there this stuff isn't battle tested yet. There's quite a few centralization issues or challenges, which, like, some of that's okay if you use a centralized multi-sig or whatever to start with, and then you have plans to further decentralize and stuff later. But if you don't change that when TVL changes, then you can have more of a problem. And I think one of the biggest things here is that bridges are a honeypot. From a user point of view, if you think about a bridge, then you think your asset's being transferred from one chain to another, but it's not actually being transferred to one chain to another. The asset that you get on the other chain is a IOU that you can redeem it for that original token. But people have this concept that when they've bridged to another chain, I've just got assets on that chain, but they don't realize that they're actually exposed to the entire bridge throughout that process. And so I think, that doesn't necessarily mean anything for security purposes, but when people think about what the risks they are exposed to, that's a point that they don't quite realize. Just the fact that the big bridges that are going to exist are going to be huge from a TVL point of view. They will be a massive honeypot. And so that's one. And that is obviously being tested recently. Layer 2, this one, so there's obviously lots of Layer 2 solutions coming up or being developed, getting adoption, systems are moving across. We've got the optimistic rollup starting to work. There's still some centralized aspects on some of this stuff. It's not kind of fully decentralized yet, and we haven't tested things either with like large TVL or with the bad scenarios, that the exit scenario, like what happens, and that hasn't been like really tested in production yet. So this is one we're just kind of keeping an eye on, but it's one that things haven't been as battle tested as other areas yet. Smart contract integrations, interfaces. So from going total non-security example here, I used to manage a traditional insurance finance team, and I had two main units that reported to me. One unit looked after the data, or the insurance policies. These many people have this many policies and all the massive data sets. And then the other team are the actuaries that kind of took that information and interpreted it and projected out financial projections and stuff. And every single problem that we had was because the actuarial team misinterpreted what the data team was giving them. And we had these massive documentations and all the rest of it about exactly what each data field meant, what the definition was. And even though we spent heaps of effort on it, there was still misinterpretation and it wasn't absolutely clear in all scenarios. And that premium was some slight different definition to what the actuaries assumed. And all of a sudden you've got a big financial reporting difference that you have to explain to auditors, etc. So I see a very similar thing happening with security. When you build on top of a system or use another system that you haven't built yourself or you don't know about, it's very easy to misinterpret exactly what that does. In most cases, you get 90% of it, but then it's the edge cases that, I just assumed that it worked like that, but perhaps it didn't. And so I think, especially when we get more layers in the stack, and you don't necessarily expect the devs that are developing the top layer to understand everything all the way through. That's when you can have issues. So we got some examples there, and I think this is one that obviously I'd like to see like formal verifications and other tools to kind of bring this together so that people understand what they're building on top of, and be able to, I'm not quite sure how you do this, Millie, but the stuff that you're talking about where you can formally verify the whole thing rather than just your thing on top. So that type of stuff. So if you built on top of Compound, then do the whole thing in one go. So that type of thing is I see is very useful. But this one's I think with a lot of the ones I'm talking about here, a lot of issues, actually the more human element of things rather than the technical development and coding practices and development practices. Decentralized governance and contract updates. So yeah, this one's interesting. There's two main categories here. One where you've got a nice battle-tested system, all the rest of it, then obviously you want to upgrade it, add a new asset, do something new, etc., because you need it from a product perspective. But then as soon as you make that upgrade, then you're potentially introducing a whole bunch of risk and you lose the battle-tested status. Essentially, you kind of go back to zero in the worst case, I guess. And so how do we have decentralized governance processes that make sure that we've got that security that comes along with it, and everyone voting is not just looking at each other going, yeah, you checked it, didn't you? Or you checked it. What's the process? And so I think that's a very, very interesting one. And obviously, like with Compound, having some stuff like that, and then you've got time locks where you've introduced a bug, but now we can't change it for another 7 days or whatever it is. And I like time locks from one perspective, but from this perspective, it gives you some problems as well. So I think this stuff is really hard. The other one, which we haven't seen a lot of yet, but I think there's been one smaller one, which I can't remember the name of, to be honest, is where you have a decentralized governance attack where someone gets a whole lot of tokens and forces through a malicious proposal and just basically says, I'll take all the money. And that's happened at a lower scale. And I think Maker quite a while ago had the potential for something like that to happen, but they've subsequently obviously remedied that. So I think that's something that we need to kind of be aware of. But again, it's at the people and social economic attack layer rather than at the technical coding layer. And so I think a lot of the things we're seeing now are more on, or looking at now, or we think the emergent risks are more at that, how people use the systems or the economic attacks and those types of things. I mean, the technical, pure technical coding risk is still always going to be there. It's still going to be a fundamental piece, but I feel like the industry has a certain level of tooling and stuff that can be achieved to a sufficient enough level if you've got the time and resources to do that. This type of stuff that I'm talking about now is more, I feel it's trickier problems to solve. Yeah, and that's pretty much the end of my presentation, so happy to take some questions. I guess one thing I did want to make a small plug for is we have a big upgrade coming with Nexus, calling Nexus v2, and we're looking to basically turn Nexus into like a marketplace for risk where risk experts can decide on how they see risk on particular systems, and so people like yourselves, if you have those types of skills, can potentially get involved in the system and price risk. And at the moment, to do that, you need capital as well to make that worthwhile. But in V2, you will be able to effectively be a delegated staking provider or a syndicate operator, and other people will be able to delegate their stake to experts that run this stuff in return for fees, etc. So, what we're trying to do here is provide a platform that can, obviously, insurance is the last place you want to be. You want to prevent the problems, not solve them with insurance. But we believe that insurance is a kind of necessary part of the stack, because not everything can be caught during development. So hopefully we're supporting the security of the whole ecosystem from that side as well. Yeah, so that's it. Yep, could keep it short and sweet, but yeah, happy to take any questions.
Sorry. Yeah, Rajiv is not here yet. I guess he didn't expect it, so I'll take the mic. Who has a question for you? Come on. You can come up with a question, please.
Oh, good.
Risk in crypto is hard. How can you give me more details on how a marketplace like that would work out for people like us to come in and try to assess risk on the incredibly diverse way of different economic games we're playing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, I agree, it's hard. The way we're setting it up is that you can just back the things that you want to back. So if you've had time to review 3 protocols, then you can back those at different prices if you're happy with them, but you don't have to back anything else. So you can choose what you want to do. You don't have to do everything. And so you can be focused on a particular niche if you want to do that. So we're trying to make the system as flexible as possible from that perspective. And I guess the more we see, the more successful syndicates that would operate would be led by experts that kind of say, this is what we plan on doing, this is our approach, this is how we do it, and then they would be able to attract more capital. Because we've got a lot of NXM holders that would want to effectively delegate to experts to run this stuff on their behalf, and share in the fees and that type of thing.